How do you cash out your millions in crypto in your home, high-tax country with no source of funds? It's called private placement life insurance. And this is how the wealthy aggressively avoid paying taxes and get a clean exit for their investments. And in this video, I'm going to break it down for you. Welcome to the 5th installment of the Poor Man's Pablo Escobar, where we dive into the underworld of finances through Offshore Corp Talk Posts. And in today's case, we have a millionaire Italian crypto bro who wants to breathe decently fresh air and not cash out in Dubai's desert, but can't provide a paper trail for his cryptos. So, how does he off-ramp his millions without raising any red flags? Let's dive in. First off, the entire system for reporting your crypto proceeds for tax purposes is broken. I don't care what anybody says, people today who have bought their cryptos legitimately years ago are seen as guilty until proven innocent. Why is that? Because their exchange is now dead where they bought it from, or they received cryptos at a time when there were no clear rules around it. And with DACate and other crypto regulations coming into force, cashing out is going to get harder and harder. Now, our Italian crypto bro hasn't filed anything with his home country, even though he has multiple 7 figures in both Bitcoin and ETH. And apparently he's also got a lot of gambling income, which in his words makes him worse than a terrorist in the eyes of banks. So what do you do in these situations where you want to stay at your home and not cash out in Dubai? If your cryptos come from legitimate sources, but the history is too messy to explain, hundreds of trades, missing exchanges, transfers from wallets you barely remember, then your best shot at getting a clean source of funds is through crypto audit providers. Think of them as forensic accountants for your coins. They'll dig through your transaction history, link it back to you, and then provide you with a formal audit report. It's basically a receipt that you can show banks. In fact, many of these audit providers have direct partnerships with banks, which means that their reports get pre-approved for onboarding. You're not going to have any problems with the bank transfer. Reputable ones, they include alt.co and Mount Pelerin. They're going to help you document that paper trail, sell the coins, and then send it to the bank. Keep in mind that this works if you can prove that the cryptos were bought with legitimate sources, such as your salary or a bank wire. For cash buys, or if you don't have the bank wire statement anymore, you want to use a flexible accountant. I've made numerous topics and videos on that previously. Now, when it comes to paying no tax, or as little tax as possible, there's one strategy that the wealthy have been using for decades, and that's whole life insurance. But not in the way that most people think about it, because for most, life insurance feels like a liability. A monthly expense that only pays out when you die. Funnily enough, death insurance. Something you buy to protect your family, but not something you use while you're alive. But with this one trick, it all of a sudden becomes a leveraging tool that you can use to pay almost no tax, even as a US citizen. Essentially, what you're going to do is you're going to morph that policy into something similar to a savings account at a bank, where you can take out loans on your investments tax-free. Now, you want to specifically use private placement life insurance in offshore jurisdictions such as Bermuda, the Turks and Caicos, or the Cayman Islands, simply because they offer far more flexibility and less regulation than anything you'll find in the US or the EU. Now, as I said, what you're going to do is you're going to use these life insurance policies as leveraging tools, whether it be for business or property acquisition through loans. So let's say that you have 50 grand in cryptos that you can plow in. Well, first of all, this policy is going to pay you out dividends, say 5%, which is first off way more than any bank is going to give you. And secondly, it's tax-free. And the key is though that these dividends, they are compounded. And what that means is that the first year you're going to get $2,500, 5% of 50 grand, right? But over a 10-year period, instead of $25,000, you're actually making $81,455. Okay, that's compounded. Now, as we said, we're going to take out a loan on that policy. Let's be extremely aggressive for this example, even though technically you can't do it. And we take out a $50,000 loan on the policy. The interest is going to be 5%. Now, your first reaction is going to be, won't these both just cancel each other out? Well, no, because this interest rate is fixed. So over a 10-year period, you're going to be paying out $25,000. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that $81,455 is way more than 25 grand. So you're actually making a profit of 56 grand, and you have these 50,000 that you can play around with and invest tax-free, build and stack your wealth inside this life insurance policy. Now, the key is, if you do decide to go down the path of life insurance with your crypto investments, you want to find a provider that accepts those cryptos directly. And there are a couple out there. The best well-known and reputable one is Meanwhile. It's a Bermuda-based life insurance provider. They will require you to go to their offices directly, or you have to work through a lawyer who's built that connection. But why do you want to send it directly? Because it can be used as a vehicle to stack your crypto gains over the next decades. And what you'll do with your Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, whatever, is you can take out those loans, even as a US citizen, tax-free. Let me show you an example how. Now, in order to give you a specific outline on how to actually implement this strategy and also its power, I'm going to use US citizens for this example because they have to pay taxes on their worldwide income. It works for everybody, but if you're a US citizen, you want to establish a Bermuda non-foreign grantor trust. You can use it in any jurisdiction, but if you're going to take out a Bermuda policy, it makes sense that it's owned by a Bermuda trust. And then this trust is going to own a foreign LLC, it can even be a US LLC, and you're going to put in all of your cryptos into this LLC. Then this LLC is going to take out this private placement life insurance policy, and you're going to be able to convert your cryptos into stable coins, buy assets, and accumulate all of that wealth tax-free. And now remember that this life insurance policy can take out loans on the cash value so that you can fund your personal investments, once again, tax-free. And when you pass away, your beneficiaries are going to get all of your death benefits without having to pay capital gains or estate taxes. Now, you may be asking yourself, why all this complexity? Because banks like it. Institutions like it. They're not going to ask extra questions when money is coming from an insurance policy, whereas for cryptos, they're going to ask you to know your transaction details, etc., and it's tax-free. An important caveat I want to make is that these policies are designed to stack your assets long-term, tax-free, and it's not your personal piggy bank. I would recommend them actually for those who have a couple of million, kind of like the case study. Otherwise, the maintenance fees and the setup costs are just not going to be worth it. For non-US citizens, you can have more control over your policy, but for US citizens, you can't have direct access to the PPLI maintenance. You need to have a third party, kind of like in a trust, where they're the ones that are managing your policy for you. That's it for today's presentation, guys. As always, if you enjoy these type of videos, you can comment down below or share it with a friend. It will help with the YouTube algorithm. I made a previous presentation on how you can use private foundations and trusts and incorporate them perfectly with life insurance. It will add extra layers for asset protection and tax optimization. You can check them out over there, but I'll be seeing you next time. And until then, bye-bye.